comps section is history. Question 1. Compare and contrast the attributes of the British model of higher ed with those of the German model. Which of the two models was used first in American higher ed and why? The German model was the first one that was used in American higher education, and it traced roots of innovative structure to the University of Berlin, which focused on advanced studies, original scholarship, and professional publications. This model began to be replicated in the U.S. following the Civil War. This model brought the graduate education and research to the forefront of American higher education. It added to the depth of teaching methodologies employed in the university classrooms. Professors with specialties became popular, and the number of research journals and publications increased. It offered instruction in professions essential to an industrial society, organized knowledge into relevant specialties, and hired expert faculty members in those areas. It did not only transmit the knowledge of the past, but advanced the frontiers of knowledge for the future. This model focused on distinction between preparatory studies and higher learning. Its academic mission was based on advanced knowledge through specialized, original research. This model stresses on rigorous, empirical, specialized scientific research. The British model served as the ideal in the development of earliest colleges in the American colonies. The primary emphasis was on teaching, religious training, and the study of humanities. The main purpose was to prepare the young generation for public office and ministry. The pattern of colleges as teaching institutions complemented by learning societies was imported into North America by British settlers during the colonial era, beginning with the foundation of Harvard College in 1636. The British model focused on classical education and consisted of curriculum, library, faculty, students, dormitories, dining halls, paternalism, and respect for rural settings, that is, colleges in the country, not in the city. The Catholic Church and religious education played very important roles in that type of education. Question number 2. What landmark reform occurred in American higher education in the 19th, 20th, or 21st century? How did they shape American higher education and change the relationship between institutions and the government? Name one reform. A major landmark reform of the 20th century, 1901 to 2000, was the GI Bill in 1944. This law provided a range of benefits for returning World War II veterans, commonly referred to as GIs. Benefits included cash payments of tuition and living expenses to attend universities, high school or vocational education, as well as 1 year of unemployment compensation. This reform shaped American higher education by admissions policies, equal access, and social class. The inflow of veterans into universities transformed American perception about colleges, shifted the focus of post-secondary instruction from the liberal arts to vocational training, and set a model for future government beneficial involvement in the American education system. The Higher Education Act of 1965 was a legislative document that was signed into law on November 8, 1965, to strengthen the educational resources of our colleges and universities and to provide financial assistance for students in post-secondary and higher education. In addition, a second major landmark reform of the 19th century, 1801 to 1900, in American higher education was the Morrill Land Grant Acts of 1862 and 1890. The Morrill Land Grant Act of 1862 was known as the Land Grant College Act. It was a major boost to higher education in America. The grant was originally set up to provide grants of land to states in order to establish institutions in each state that would educate people in agriculture, home economics, mechanical arts, and other professions that were practical at that time. A second Morrill Act in 1890 required each state to show that race was not an admissions criterion, or else to designate a separate land-grant institution for persons of color. Among the 70 colleges and universities which have eventually grown from the Morrill Acts are several of today's historically black colleges and universities. This act provided land and funds to assist in creating separate but equal higher education institutions in order to provide quality educational opportunities to African Americans. The Morrill Land Grant Acts have become a major educational resource for the American nation. Over the years, it has proven to be an important part of American educational system by creating the infrastructure to support the need for a college education. This also created a pathway for the public funding of education through property taxes. History question 3. Trace the idea of curriculum in higher education from earliest times until today. How has the nature of course offerings changed over time? The curriculum of American higher education is rooted in the medieval University of England, with the traditions of Oxford and Cambridge. This classical education, based on concepts such as quadrivium and trivium, formed the basis for the early colonial times. The trivium consists of general grammar, logic, and classical rhetoric. The quadrivium consists of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. Harvard University, which was established in 1963, followed a curriculum consistent with the instructional style of the period. Harvard University, modeled after Emmanuel College, offered bachelor and master degrees within provided fields of study. They emphasized rhetorical principles, rote learning, and constant drilling. The first American colleges offered broad liberal curriculum. The first American colleges offered broad liberal arts curriculum designed to educate Puritan ministers. Higher educational institutions later began to rise from the liberal arts education based on quadrivium, trivium, and Greek forms of education. The German influence on American higher education, which was based on research and scholarship as forms of education, added the advanced training for individuals within their particular fields of study. The colleges became universities with their new offerings of doctorate degrees. Over time, the curriculum of educational institutions continued to diversify with the passing of the Morrill Land Grant Acts of 1862 and 1890, which added vocational skills for students, particularly within the fields of agriculture and mechanics. Thomas Jefferson was an early advocate of expanded higher education opportunities. He argued that America's growing democracy needed educated citizens and that growing market economy needed a skilled workforce. By the end of the 19th century, the American curriculum evolved into a flexible and diverse wealth of courses beyond the imagination of the colonial faculty. Graduate studies were introduced. New professional schools in fields like engineering, business, and education became staples. Continuing education and correspondence courses were added. Elective courses and majors arose. Today, course offerings abound. Students have a variety of choices to decide what programs they desire to pursue. Question number 4 in history. Discuss the origin and development of the American Community College and its impact on American higher education. Founded in 1901, Joliet Junior College in Illinois is the oldest existing public two-year college. In the early years, the college focused on general liberal arts studies. During the Depression of the 30s, community colleges began offering job training programs as a way of easing widespread unemployment. After World War II, the conversion of military industries to consumer goods created new skilled jobs. This economic transformation, along with the GI Bill, created the drive for more higher ed options. In 1948, the Truman Commission suggested the creation of a network of public community-based colleges to serve local needs. Community colleges became a national network in the 1960s with the opening of 457 public community colleges, more than the total in existence before that decade. Baby boomers coming of age fueled enrollment growth. The construction involved in this gigantic growth of facilities was funded by a robust economy and supported by the social activism of the time. The number of community colleges has steadily grown since the 1960s. At present, there are 1,166 community colleges in the United States. When the branch campuses of community colleges are included, the number totals about 1,600. In the 20th century, community colleges have not only survived, they have thrived by demonstrating remarkable resiliency and becoming centers of educational opportunity open to all seekers. They pride themselves on providing educational marketplaces where student choices and community needs influence course offerings. Now, we mark a century in which community colleges have helped millions of people learn and advance toward personal goals while providing a forum to address challenges facing whole communities. The community college system within the American higher ed system began with the founding of Joliet College in 1901. The purpose of these institutions was to provide the foundational liberal arts core classes for the first 2 years of education before transferring to the university to finish their baccalaureate degree. Before the 1970s, CCs in the U.S. were more commonly referred to as junior colleges, and that term is still used at some institutions. However, the term junior college has evolved to describe private 2-year institutions, whereas the term community college has evolved to describe publicly funded 2-year institutions. The name derives from the fact that community colleges primarily attract and accept students from the local community and are often supported by local tax revenue. CCs were formed to provide 5 curriculum functions of education to the local community. These are academic transfer, continuing education, development education, vocational and technical training, and community service. One of the main purposes for this implementation of the CCs is to allow individuals to complete their first 2 years of education before transferring to the traditional 4-year institutions to finish their degree. This type of education provides opportunities for community members who may have already completed programs to work towards certificates, diplomas, and associate's degrees. Many also offer continuing and adult education. After graduating from a community college, some students transfer to a 4-year liberal arts college or university for 2 to 3 years to complete a bachelor's degree.